the outset, let me say thank you to Bernadette Toomey, our principal, who's coming up right now. She is the principal at PS 195, and everyone at PS 195 I wanted to thank for hosting us today, and also thank signer Pam Mitchell for joining us. This was a big day for the staff and students here and at public schools across the city, the first day of classes since October 26th. Hurricane Sandy did flood the basement of PS 195, but crews from the Department of Education did a great job pumping out the water and getting the building ready for class today. I went down into the basement to take a look. The boilers were built in the 40s, which is good news because they are very big and very strong, and they did survive. One of the boilers is back up, which is enough to heat this school. The other boiler they will get up in the next few days, and they really only use that when it gets very cold. So this school is in good shape. We'll hear more about the work here and other schools across the city in a few minutes, but let me just give you an overview. Some 94% of the city schools were open today, and many more will open on the next day of classes, which is on Wednesday. Remember, tomorrow, Election Day, the schools are closed. We handed out MetroCards to students staying in emergency shelters to help them get to school. And I can tell you that the preliminary count from schools reporting attendance so far is 96.3% of students. They showed up today. That's about the same as on the Monday before Election Day last year. And we didn't have Sandy last year, so it really is great. And we expect even more students to be back when classes resume Wednesday morning after tomorrow's Election Day hiatus, because if you remember, some of these schools we could not get open, and those students were going to move to other schools if things aren't fixed by Wednesday. But they don't start until Wednesday, so our attendance actually is great. There are 16 schools that still have emergency shelters in them. We think by Wednesday those shelters will either be moved elsewhere or will stay where they are, but in a manner that won't interfere with school operations. In other words, totally separate from the schools. Today was also the first work day in a week when our subways were back in operations. Things there, I'm happy to report, went relatively smoothly and will almost certainly improve in the days ahead. Mass transit is definitely the ways to go, given that gas supplies in our city remain below normal. The supply of gasoline entering our city from interstate pipelines continues to increase. Barges carrying something like 21 million gallons of gasoline also unloaded at the region's terminals this weekend, and there's more coming in. It will take a little while to get distribution to retail gas stations until the bottleneck clears. Lines at the pump probably will remain long. You should know we posted a police officer at every open gas station in the city to keep order and to encourage gas station owners to remain open. We ask motorists to be patient and to please use mass transit as much as you can. Now, the latest estimates of people without power is that 115,000 customers still remain without service. While that's down from 145,000 yesterday, it's still a lot of people without power. Most are in parts of the city such as the Rockaways, Staten Island, and South Brooklyn that were hard hit by Sandy. Many of the people live in public housing, and I'd like to give you a quick update on that. There were a total of 402 buildings in the NYCHA system that lost electricity. NYCHA now has 288 buildings housing 58,000 people who've had their power restored. That leaves 114 buildings housing 21,000 people where electricity is still out. After Sandy hit, there were 386 buildings without heat and hot water. Now, NYCHA developments with 212 buildings housing 42,000 people who are affected by Sandy have heat and hot water restored. However, there's still 174 buildings housing 35,000 people who still need heat and hot water. Now, here's what's happening. NYCHA has completed pumping out the water from all affected developments. That's the first step. And over the next 2 or 3 days, our goal is to restore electricity to nearly all developments where it's feasible, and to restore heat and hot water to about 2/3 of the developments that currently are without them. To help deal with a power outage at the city's request, the Long Island Power Authority has provided 10 emergency generators to help bring back power to Hamel houses in the Rockaways. NYCHA has also received generators to restore power to Carlton Manor, Beach 41, Ocean Bay, and Red Fern developments, also in the Rockaways, and the NYPD has moved mobile light towers to the Rockaways. There's no question but the continuing lack of electrical service is jeopardizing the health and safety of people living in affected areas during this cold snap. The forecast is for continued cold weather for much of the week and potentially a serious storm with wind gusts of 40 to 50 miles an hour beginning Wednesday afternoon and into Thursday. The storm could bring more flooding, although thankfully not of the scale that Sandy did. All this makes our work more difficult and more urgent, which is why today I've designated community restoration directors, we're calling them, to deal with the immediate human needs of people recovering from Sandy's effects. These community restoration directors are seasoned, high-level managers in our administration that I have enormous confidence in. Their ability to manage, their ability to reach out, their ability to get resources from all parts of our administration. Hector Figueroa will be our point person on Staten Island. Matt Mahoney, Associate Commissioner of the Director of the Department of Environmental Protection, will be our point person for Manhattan and the Bronx. Community Affairs Unit Commissioner Nasli Parvisi will oversee efforts in Brooklyn, and Diane Billings-Burford, New York's Chief Service Officer, will be the point person in Queens, and they'll be responsible for identifying urgent needs and deploying resources to meet them. I think we're at the stage now where we've got to get down at an even more micro level and make sure that each individual gets the services they need, and particularly when we think that in 3 or 4 days we'll have made a lot of progress in restoring both heat and electricity and hot water to a vast bulk of the people who are still without. Since Saturday night, we've maintained shelters where people living in areas without power can stay and get warm. If you're living in a building without heat and you're elderly or have an infant under a year old or have heart disease or other medical conditions, you should get to a warm place. Or if you find somebody shivering uncontrollably, or if you see someone who is disoriented, those are the symptoms of hypothermia. Hypothermia can be fatal, and anyone who has these symptoms needs to get to a warm place as quickly as possible. As they have for the past 2 evenings, buses at the city's disaster assistance centers, there are now a total of 6 of them on Staten Island, the Rockaways, and Coney Island, and in the Bronx, will help people get to shelters. Volunteers will continue to go door to door in affected areas, urging residents who need help to move to one of the 15 shelters we're maintaining to help people during this cold snap. And again this evening, NYPD patrol officers will use loudspeakers to urge people to go where they can be warm and safe and tell them how to get there. There are also more than 200 centers where people can go and stay warm during the day. Call 311 and we'll be happy to tell you where. We also continue to make enormous efforts to get food, water, and essential supplies to New Yorkers who are still without electric power. Yesterday, roughly 200,000 New Yorkers picked up some 600,000 prepared meals and 100,000 liters of water at 12 distribution sites. They also received 22,000 blankets, 4,500 boxes of disposable diapers, some 5,000 flashlights and batteries, and large quantities of toiletries. Some 3,700 volunteers coordinated by NYC Service and their partner agencies assisted this effort, and that included distributing food, water, and supplies next door. Volunteers are also helped in clearing debris from parks and other locations. Food distribution centers opened at noon again today and will operate until 4 p.m. In the days ahead, they will remain open for as long as needed. To date, more than, I'm happy to say, $15.4 million supporting hurricane relief, Hurricane Sandy relief, has come into the Mayor's Fund to advance New York City. And I can't say enough about the generosity of individuals and companies. If you want to make cash contributions, go to nyc.gov or call 311 for details. In addition to these immediate emergency steps, we're also addressing the challenge of providing longer-term housing for New Yorkers displaced from their homes by Hurricane Sandy. Many buildings were flooded may well be out of commission for a long time because of damage to boilers and electrical systems. They may include public housing as well as private apartments. As I said before, I am very optimistic on us getting back not everyone, but most of the public housing buildings and the developments that have suffered. There will be a handful with very severe damage, and we'll have to do something about that. But for most of them, I think we are optimistic that since we've finished the pumping and looked at the infrastructure, we may be able to surprise everybody over the next 2, 3, 4 days and get everybody or almost everybody back. It's a big challenge, but I want to ensure everyone that every New Yorker who needs a warm place to live and a roof over his or her head is going to have one. And that's why today I'm announcing the appointment of one of the nation's top emergency management professionals, Brad Gair, as Director of Housing Recovery Operations. His mission will be to develop and implement a comprehensive plan to house New Yorkers displaced by Sandy. He is a resident of Brooklyn who has 20 years of experience in such efforts at every level of government and has particular expertise in post-disaster housing recovery. As a senior official at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, from 1999 through 2006, he managed long-term hurricane recovery efforts in Louisiana, Florida, and North Carolina. He was also the highest-ranking federal executive directly involved in helping New York City get back on our feet after 9/11. And from 2006 through 2009, he was Deputy Commissioner for Operations at our city's Office of Emergency Management, which means that he really knows our city's needs intimately. Since then, he has been president of Good Harbor EM, a private emergency management firm with clients locally, including our OEM and also overseas. His extensive hands-on expertise, I think, makes him exactly the right person to tackle this job and to get started on it today. Now, before turning the floor over to the other speakers, let me briefly touch on other post-Sandy recovery progress. One is transportation-related. As of midnight tonight, the emergency rules on permitting street pickups by livery cabs and black cars and multiple fares in them and in taxis will be suspended, so service is back to normal, for them at least. Sanitation crews are cleaning up storm debris around the clock, which is why street cleaning rules remain suspended today, as well as on tomorrow, Election Day. That's also caused temporary cutbacks in picking up refuse. There's no recycling collection until further notice. We'll get these services back on normal schedules as quickly as we can, but we're trying to devote our efforts to those most in need, people that have had extensive damage, the debris from that damage they're putting outside, and we've just got to get that off the streets and carted away so that they can resume some semblance of a normal life, and that people that want to get into those houses and help repair can get there. 3/4 of the city's parks and playgrounds, I'm happy to report, are now reopened. There was some damage done, as you know, to many of them, mostly trees, but in some of these neighborhoods, even the play equipment was damaged, and we're trying to make sure everything is safe before we open them. So let me start by turning things over to our school's chancellor, Dennis Walcott. Dennis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to give a quick update on the status of our schools. As the mayor indicated, we have 94% of our students who are here. Our schools are open and we're doing well. We are still taking a look at those schools that are structurally damaged, and yesterday the mayor announced that there were 57. That number is now down to 48. And in addition to that, yesterday the mayor talked about roughly 100 schools that were without power. That number is now down to 19. So we're continuing to working on our schools. As the mayor indicated Wednesday, those schools that are structurally damaged will be relocated into other facilities. So we've been working on busing routes along that line. And so the team at the Department of Education, our great teachers, our great principals, the custodians, the helpers, the parent coordinators have all been working together on behalf of our students. And so, again, we see our students coming back. It was great to see early this morning school buses rolling. We had roughly 74,000 buses, 7,400 buses on the road this morning. That's out of a total fleet of 8,000. So we had most of our buses there. Most of our school buildings are open. We had approximately 86% or so of our students in attendance. So again, we're seeing more and more people coming back to our schools, and it's thanks to the cooperative efforts of the mayor, City Hall, OEM, and our great personnel at the Department of Education.
Thank you, Dennis. Our ACE press secretary said I said 96% before. It is 86, which is exactly the same as we had on Monday a year ago, and without Sandy, so that's great. Our next speaker is Brad Gair. Brad, thank you for taking on this vital new role, the task of emergency housing recovery in New York City. You have all the background. Now you got to go do the job. Congratulations.
Thank you. thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you entrusting me with this important mission. As a New Yorker and resident of the Borough of Brooklyn, I'm very gratified to be able to put all of my expertise to work on this critical problem. Post-disaster housing is usually one of the most complex and challenging issues to be dealt with in any catastrophic disaster like this. We know it will take a while, it will be difficult, there will be bumps along the road, but we believe that we have the resources to get this done. The experiences I've had on other disasters doing similar projects, I've seen it done well, and I've seen it done not so well. So I've got the lessons learned and the expertise to try to put this all back into place as quickly as possible. We cannot call our recovery complete until every New Yorker has a place to call home again. And we really have to rely on three things to get this done. First, we have to use innovative methods. We have to use every possible resource available to us. We have to have a compassionate approach, and we have to be tenacious in our commitment to getting New Yorkers back to their homes again. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Brad, thank you. He will be reporting to Deputy Mayor Steele, and I think this is exactly the right person. The fact that we found the right person at the right time is very lucky for this city. We need all of his expertise, and he really has been through this before in ways that, thankfully, we have not. The schools, city schools custodians did a fantastic job, as I talked about before, here in this school, but also at schools all across the city. The fact that we had this high percentage of schools open today is a testament to what they do, not just in emergencies, but every day. They are represented by Local 32BJ of the Service Employees International Union, which represents the school custodians, and Hector Figueroa is here, the president. Hector, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. We'd like to say that we feel incredibly proud of the work of our members. They've been working alongside with the custodial engineers and the fire safety personnel for the last week, really making sure that our schools reopen, and also that our schools were serviced while some of them were working as shelters. And I'm very glad to say that members like Rosabel and Bashar in this school have worked not only in this school but also in other schools, because it's really about being a team, standing up together for the city and doing what is right. And we look forward to continue to work with the mayor, the chancellor, Brad in your role. Our members are everywhere in schools and residential and commercial buildings, and this is a time that we really need to make sure that our facilities meet the needs of our children, our families, all New Yorkers. So thank you, Mayor, for this opportunity, and we look forward to continue to work hard for the weeks to come.
Hector, thank you, and thank all your members for us, if you would. And next, Robert Troeller. He is the president of 891, Local 891 of the Custodial Engineers Union.
Thank you, Mayor. My union represents New York City School Custodial Engineers. They are the facility managers in the public schools. My members have been working long and hard. Their work began several days before the storm as they prepared the schools to operate as shelters, taking in supplies, setting up cots, getting them ready. They worked together with the members of Hector's union to make sure that the shelters were available for the public when the storm hit. After the storm hit, they were, of course, responsible for operating those shelters, making sure they continued to remain available, and at the same time, they turned their attention to those schools which were damaged in the storm. They've been working tirelessly with their crew, with the trades, skilled trades, and with other city workers to make sure that we can get the schools back in use, full use, as soon as possible. I ask your patience. Some of these schools are severely damaged, but most of them, as the mayor and chancellor pointed out, are already back in service. We're working hard to get the rest back in service as quick as possible. Thank you very much.
Robert, thank you, and also please thank your members for all that they do. Next, Borough President Marty Markowitz, and he wanted to talk a little bit about post-Sandy recovery efforts here in Brooklyn. Marty?
Thank you, Mayor, very, very much, and I want to thank you and the entire executives, agencies of government in New York City. They've done an extraordinary job day and night. Governor Cuomo, I thank you for all the work, and your entire staff, the National Guard, and everyone that's lending a hand. And today, the Secretary of Homeland Security is touring, just finished touring Seagate, and is now in Coney Island. So I really have to thank President Barack Obama for the outstanding assistance to New York City. I want to make it clear in Brooklyn, and that's what I could speak on behalf of, that no neighborhood is being ignored. No neighborhood is being ignored. Every single elected official, every single agency are working for you. On Wednesday morning, Mayor, I was on the corner of Surf Avenue and Stillwell Avenue, Coney Island. A man came by, honked his horn, he yelled out, and I can't use all his words because they're a little salty, a little Brooklyn, you might say. And he said to me, you see all this stuff? We can replace it, but we're here. And that's the message. We're here. And every now and then, you and I get jaded a little bit by folks. Sometimes we get jaded. I invite you to come into the areas of Brooklyn that are impacted. You have never seen the amount of humanity, thousands and thousands of volunteers spending their own money, raising money, bringing money in, bringing food and clothing in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. It is incredible. I want to give a salute to every one of those volunteers that put their life on hold to assist those they don't know. And that shows humanity and our borough, Brooklyn spirit, and the whole city of New York. And finally, I want to thank the companies as well, because there are companies that are donating a little federal contract. Just as an example, called me, Brooklyn company, and spent the last 4 days free of charge with his large trucks just pumping out basements of homeowners in the areas involved, particularly in Red Hook and in Gerritsen Beach. So I have to salute all these fine human beings, and that's the story that will be written when this is over. So all I want everyone to know is that we are doing everything in our power, every ability we have to bring relief to you, each and every one of you. And if there's anyone that you know that needs help, any of those that are living on those upper floors that we have not heard from, please make the calls so that we can get assistance there as fast as possible. Finally, Mayor, thank you for choosing the school. My wife graduated here. My mother-in-law, of blessed memory, graduated here. And I'm Manhattan Beach by marriage. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Marty. We have Councilmember Michael Nelson here. And I think Assemblymember Stephen Simowitz was here. If he is in the back, thank you for coming. Let me remind all New Yorkers that tomorrow is Election Day. Vote. It is our most precious right. It is the one that guarantees all our other rights as Americans. It is the essence of being a citizen. As we said yesterday, 61 polling places have had to be relocated because of Sandy-related issues. You can go to the Board of Elections website, which is vote.nyc.ny.us. That's vote.nyc.ny.us to find out if your polling site has been changed and where it has been moved to. Also, I wanted to thank a lot of people who are trying to get things back. NYU Hospital, I talked to people from NYU today. They are working as hard as they can to get their hospital back. Con Ed is close to getting STEAM back, which will help us open a bunch of other hospitals. We're trying to get Bellevue back online as quickly as possible, although that'll probably take 3 or 4 weeks. But we are making a lot of progress. Before taking questions, let me just summarize for our Spanish-speaking New Yorkers. El 90% de nuestras escuelas públicas abrieron hoy y más escuelas van a abrir el miércoles. La ciudad sigue dando comida, agua y un lugar cálido para personas que todavía no tienen electricidad. Nos vamos a asegurar que las personas que no pueden regresar a sus casas tienen un lugar donde quedarse. With that, we'll be happy to take some questions. Please identify yourself to the press, what your news organization is.
Rich Lamb, WCBS 880. Mr. Mayor, given the fact that tomorrow's Election Day, how much confidence do you have that people will be able to get to alternate polling places? We know the city's working with them.
Well, I think they can. The question is, will they make the effort? Unfortunately, in our society today, these days, a much too smaller percentage of the people vote. It's been going down, and that's not good for democracy. Maybe the fact that it's a little harder to do this time here in New York will give them impetus to go out and do it. But the Board of Elections says that they have a place. We've provided some of them. State's been helpful, and hopefully everything will go smoothly. Yes, Miss.
I wanted to talk to Tracy Strahan from WNBC. I wanted to talk to you about the 8 schools being used as shelters right now. Many people doubting that Wednesday will be enough time.
Well, you can doubt all you want. I'm telling you what we're trying to do. Pardon?
Is there a contingency plan?
We will make an accommodation if we have to. We think we will have most of those shelters move the people out of the schools. There are a couple where we will keep them in the schools, but they are totally separate in terms of entrance, exit, and just in a different part of the building. And I should give a lot of credit to CUNY, who has given us a lot of space for shelters, auditoriums and gyms and classrooms, and without them would have been much more difficult to accommodate everybody. Sir.
T.W. Chang, Fox 5. At this point, do we have enough, does the city have enough temporary shelters for anybody who doesn't have heat?
Yes, and we have buses to take you there if you can't get there. If you start shaking, you go out in the street and grab a cop or have somebody grab you. We'll get you to a shelter, and we have plenty of capacity. We also, incidentally, have, we think, between the generators that we have now and the generators that are on their way to us, we think we have an adequate number of generators, and we certainly have plenty of resources to go and get others. The fact of the matter is all generators aren't equal. We need some big generators for big buildings where one generator can take care of multiple buildings. And the biggest problem is when you have a generator, that doesn't mean you can plug it in. One of the great fears we have is if Con Ed turns on the power or LIPA turns on the power on your block, if there has been damage to some of the electrical circuits in some of the houses, you can have a real fire very quickly. So until we go into every house and check, they can't turn on the power on the street. That's one of the things that's slowing it down. But I'd rather have that than make the mistake of starting a fire and killing people. And so they will disconnect. If they can't get into a house, they will disconnect if it's not acceptable. If that one house we think is a fire hazard, we disconnect that before we turn the power on the street. Yes, Miss.
About the
you could just identify yourself.
Sorry, Jen Pelt from the Associated Press. About the longer-term need for housing, what's your current estimate of how many people are poised to need that?
We're trying to get a handle on that. We think that better than half of the people are in NYCHA housing, and that we have a good plan, and I'm very optimistic that we won't get all, but we will get most of NYCHA housing back this week in terms of electricity, and a big proportion of it, not all, in terms of heat, and next week we'll even get more of it. When it comes to individuals living in their homes, we're trying to go door to door and get a real feel for it. Clearly, if your house has been damaged beyond repair, where it's dangerous, you need housing. But some of those people don't want to go to housing or new housing. They want to move in with relatives. Then there's the houses where the damage was tragic, but you could still live in the house if you could get your heat and hot water and electricity back. And we're trying to see in many of those cases how quickly that can be done. So I don't think we have a good number. It could be 10,000. It could be 5,000. It could be even less. I don't want to just give you a number. We estimate the worst case scenario that we had was 40,000, 20,000 of those in NYCHA, and I think it's down. If I had to give a good guess, it would be something less than 10. But until we really do a survey, it's just a guesstimate, and I don't know that we want to just do that. But we did hire somebody to come in here to be our housing coordinator and do something about it rather than just talking about it, sir.
Mr. Mayor, Art McFarland, WABC TV. Could you talk about the logistics for getting students on Wednesday to the new buildings where they'll be?
Well, I think if you take a look, the dry run, I suppose you can think of it as today. And I'm sure there were people where the bus didn't show. I'm sure that some buses couldn't get down the street, or the driver was new, or the bus didn't start. But in the context of trying to move lots and lots of kids, it was a relatively successful first day. We're going to look at what worked, what didn't work, and we're going to make sure that we have people outside of the schools where, in case the parents didn't get the robocall, didn't look at the on the website, didn't read the names of the schools in the paper that were closed, if they just show up, we will have buses there and somebody to direct them and take them. Will it be perfect? No. Some people are going to have longer bus rides. We can only move students to where we happen to have free seats. And as you know, no matter how fast we build extra capacity in our school system, because the schools have gotten so much better, parents aren't moving out of the city. They're continuing to keep their kids in school. And so we have a capacity problem, even if we didn't have Sandy. But I am convinced that we will do that relatively smoothly. I'm sure, once again, you can't do anything overnight in something as big as this without some minor problems, but I think it is I'm very optimistic based on the performance today. The bus drivers did all they could, and the principals and teachers and parent coordinators in the schools did a lot to inform their kids and inform the parents. And both schools where we're taking kids out of and moving and schools that are receiving kids, they all have a part to play, and they've been doing a pretty good job today. And the fact that we have tomorrow as a day to look and see what worked and what didn't work gives us some hope. And that's why we did open today, not to mention the fact that the kids in school will learn something hopefully today, sir.
Dave Seifman, New York Post. Your statement about the generators, does that mean the generators still left in Central Park by the Roadrunners or not?
I don't know which those were. My check, I don't think they were appropriate for us to use for some things, and I don't know whose generators they are and whether they've been now moved into the system. I'm not looking at a one generator. We needed 100-plus generators. We believe that we either have them or that they're on the way, some provided by the Army Corps of Engineers, some provided by FEMA, some provided by private contractors, some that the city had.
And just, separately, what advice do you have to people living along the shoreline for Wednesday? Do they have to do anything?
Look, you want to be as careful as you can without worrying people, and it's a fine balance. If you remember when Sandy was coming in, all the signs said that we were going to have a very dangerous, damaging storm, and I ordered a mandatory evacuation of low-lying areas, something that a lot of people don't like to hear. In this case, we don't think that it merits that. It is a different kind of storm. The wind is coming from a different direction. As a matter of fact, the place where it's likely to have the highest tides is not along the coast here and not up the harbor, but in the Bronx, where it's on Long Island Sound, just because of where the storm and the kind of storm and the direction of the winds. This is not a hurricane. This is a nor'easter rather than a tropical storm. So we think we'll be okay. If we hadn't had Sandy, the Office of Emergency Management would have put out a normal notification. Low-lying areas should expect sporadic flooding and high winds. But we would not have people wouldn't have taken it with a great deal of alarm. Yes, sir. Let me see. Yes, miss.
Rachel Cremidas from Gotham Schools. So for the 8 schools that have been serving as shelters, what concerns or what went into the decision to change your minds about having students go back to them?
Because we need the schools. We just need the schools, and now it's down to a manageable number. We know how many people they're serving. There's not a great influx, so we have the capacity to move them elsewhere. If you remember, we started out with 75, as I remember, and then started to consolidate. Some places only had 10 people, and we had more people volunteering to help than we had clients to help. It got down to this, and now we need the space. And if there are other alternatives for providing shelter, we will move into those. And because we have a dual responsibility of taking care of people who need shelter, but also to educate our kids.
Why couldn't the students come back today?
It just takes a while to move people. We're not ready. With the places where these people were going to move was not ready. Now it's ready, and we have a responsibility to do things safely. Nobody wants to get the kids going in school as quickly as possible, as I do, but one day made a difference in that case. For most of the schools, it did not. Yes, miss.
Erin Durkin, Daily News. Do you have any idea how the schools are going to make up all the days they've missed, and would you support waiving the 180-day requirement?
Dennis?
So first, we wanted to get ready for the opening today, and then we've already started a conversation with the State Education Department. We've talked to the union, and we'll be announcing plans as we move forward. So we're looking at a number of days, but right now our goal was to focus on opening today and then reopening those schools that are being transferred to other buildings on Wednesday, and then we'll get to the days and making them out.
Henry, did you have a question?
I wanted to ask Mr. Gair what you intend to do in your first week and then in your first month, what the tasks are that you've got to get done, and whether you might take an analog from the school's matching strategy for matching schools with people matching their housing needs.
Right. So there's two important tasks that we have to do up front. One is figure out the demand. That is how many people are going to need help. And it's a moving target, right? Because people who need help today, when the power comes on, may no longer need help. Similarly, there will be other people who think they're okay right now, who are living in homes that for whatever reason may have to come out of those homes if the heat's not back on, or if they start to have other problems in those homes that turn out not to be livable, they'll come back out. We also can expect that some people staying with family and friends, if it's going to be a long-term situation, will need some temporary housing. So job one is to quantify the demand, make sure we have the right number. Job two is to start working on solutions. And the range of options that we have available to us is very wide. And we have lots of partners in that, starting with the federal government and the state government. We've got everything from cash funding that the federal government will provide for people to find their own temporary lodging, all the way up through hotel rooms and all kinds of other temporary housing opportunities that may become available to us. And everything will be on the table to start, and then we'll start to whittle them down and prioritize them to the ones that make most sense for New Yorkers.
I think that's expecting you to have a complete plan when you've been on the job for how many hours?
About 4.
4 hours. I did talk to Craig Fugate, the head of FEMA, this morning, and to the governor a couple times, and I think we all agree that we are making progress. That's not to say that we're going to get to everybody quickly. That's not to say there aren't some great tragedies out there. But the vast bulk of the people, getting them back to their lives lets us refocus our efforts more, and that's why I've appointed these borough coordinators and Commissioner Gair to go and to take the most difficult cases, the most needing cases, where people have suffered the most damage, and help them get back on their feet. Yes, you had a question, Ms.?
News 12. Can you talk to us about mobile medical trucks and how people can get in contact with them?
You have to call 311. We are putting out mobile medical trucks. One of the issues here is how you get medications to people in need. We have talked to the big chains of department stores, CVS and Duane Reade, and what's the other big one? Walgreens. And all of them understand the need, and all couldn't be more cooperative. Yes, Miss?
Yes, from NYC. I was wondering if you were the chancellor could talk about hazmat teams. We went to 11 schools today, and 10 in Queens and 1 in Brooklyn.
Do you know anything about it? Neither of us have heard anything about it. To the best of my knowledge, we've not had any material problems. Keep in mind, with the number of schools we have, there's a problem every day. There's some school that loses power or whatever, but we haven't had no reported problems.
In general, you talked about that you'd be anticipating challenges would come up.
I think that the schools, for the vast bulk of the schools, the challenge is to give our kids the kind of education they're going to need to participate in the great American dream. And it's made more difficult by the fact that they just missed a week of school. Now, there's some schools that have physical problems as well, some places where kids have been bussed in or bussed out or the equipment has been damaged. But fundamentally, the great challenge that our 75,000 teachers and a couple thousand principals and all of the support staff face is giving our kids the kind of education we want everybody to have. We'll take one more question, sir.
John Slattery from Channel 2. Chancellor Walcott said that 48 schools are still closed and 19 are without power. Yep. Do you have an estimate as to when they might be rectified?
We are hopeful that those without power will be very quick. A big chunk of them by Wednesday. Keep in mind, yesterday, that number was like 120. So some of the others, it depends on the school, because there were some that suffered severe damage that you're not going to fix overnight. It depends how much damage. If it's structural damage, it can, Well,
some of them are coming back online now.
Right.
So when we started, the number was a lot higher. The number, as the mayor indicated, was around 70. Now we're down. So it's going down and down and down. So we're working on it.
Keep in mind, we started a while ago. There were 750,000 people without power. Today it's 110,000. Probably by now it's down to 90,000, 80,000. The big numbers come down quickly. The challenge is that when we get down to the hardcore of real problems where there's no quick, easy, inexpensive fix, that's when we're going to really be challenged. And unfortunately, that's when the public's mind goes elsewhere. Well, I can tell you, I've put in place people on the community level and the housing level to make sure that that doesn't happen, because that is my great fear. There's plenty of people with a lot of expertise working and cooperating, but when it gets down to people starting to look elsewhere and have other responsibilities, I don't want us to walk away, and I think that's how we're going to be judged, not how quickly we got back the services for the vast bulk of people. People expect that, and we've done a great job, all of the people. We've got to keep focusing. And I'll give you the last question, Ms. I'm sorry.
You said you spoke with FEMA Administrator Fugate this morning.
Yeah.
Have you guys spoken at all about trailers, FEMA trailers coming into
We've talked about that. Our new employee here is going to talk about it. It depends on where and how quickly people are going to get back. And some people don't want them. They'd rather tough it out in their houses. And people in NYCHA housing, which is half the people that have a problem, we think they're not going to need trailers because we think they're going to be able to stay in their apartments. So, until we go door to door in a lot of these places, you're just not sure yet. And also people who want something one day may change their mind the next day. All right, last question. This time it's it.
How is the city keeping
Just
track
identify yourself again.
Rachel Cremius from Gotham Schools. How is the city keeping track of the perhaps rising number of homeless students, and is there a way that you're instructing schools to be mindful of what students are going through?
Well, there aren't that. There are people who are in housing where they can't stay. There are people in shelters, but it's a de minimis number and not many kids. That's not an issue yet. What the teachers have to be careful about is understanding some kids are going to be bused long distances or are going to be living with families, with the extended family or with friends. Those kids are going to have to get certain special help from the teachers, and the teachers, I think, will be cognizant of that. Thank you very much. We're making a lot of progress. We still have a long ways to go, and all I can do is urge everybody to have patience. It's easy for me to say that, but the truth of the matter is the big problems for the vast bulk of people are on their ways to being solved, and those who have much more serious needs, we are not going to walk away from you. Thank you.
Pause. We're going to go to sir.